So as we get into our 50s and even early 60s, it's only natural you start asking yourself the question, should I retire? Could I retire? Well, in this video, we're going to cover the health side of the trade-off of early retirement. We're going to look at your identity after work ends. Then we're going to explore social connections and staying sharp. We'll also discuss the golden decade timing question. After that, we're going to examine phased retirement as a middle ground on the journey to retirement. Finally, we're going to cover the questions you need to ask yourself to help you make the decision about whether you should take early retirement. So my name is Psychosocial and I'm the founder of financialeducation.co.uk. I've got over 25 years of helping people plan for their retirement. So is there a health trade-off when it comes to early retirement? Because obviously early retirement sounds brilliant until you look at what actually happens to people's health. So I've seen some research from Germany and that tracked thousands of retirees, and I think it found something quite surprising. And it found that people who stopped work saw a 25% drop in doctor's visits compared to those still working. They exercised more, slept better, and felt less stressed. But obviously there's a catch to all this. But that only works if your job was genuinely bad for you. But if your work gave you stress, long hours, or physical strain, then yeah, stopping early probably is going to help. But studies from the US also tell a different story for people who enjoyed their work. Because those who retired early, especially involuntarily, saw faster drops in energy, mental sharpness, and ability to handle stress. So your brain continues to need challenges even in retirement. Because when you stop using it daily, cognitive decline speeds up. It's not automatic doom, but you do need a plan. That could be reading, learning new skills, puzzles, volunteering, mentoring. But what you've got to do is stay mentally active. So these, for me, aren't nice to haves if you want to get into early retirement. They're essential if you want to retire before 65 or 66. But the big question is always going to be this: does your work harm you more than retirement would benefit you? And only you can really answer that question. For most people, work isn't just a paycheck, it's who you are. Because no one asks you what you do, you often say what your job title is. And that identity pretty much disappears the day that you retire. Research has shown that 10 to 15% of retirees experience proper clinical depression. So that loss of purpose really hits hard. What happens is that you go from a structure, deadlines, achievements, and recognition to nothing. No targets to hit, no meetings to attend, no projects to finish, the phone stops ringing, people stop asking you for help. And for some people, well, that's absolute heaven. That's exactly what they want. But for others, well, it's actually really, really terrifying. You see, retirement researchers identified 4 stages of retirement that you go through. First, there's anticipation, where you're excited. Second, there's a honeymoon period, where freedom feels genuinely amazing. Then you've got disenchantment, where boredom and aimlessness creep in. And then finally, the 4th stage is where you have to build a new identity. And the problem? Well, some people just get stuck in the disenchantment phase. Without work, they feel absolutely worthless. And what happens is their self-esteem starts to crumble because they're missing that sense of accomplishment. I remember quite recently one retired teacher saying to me that she felt invisible after 30 years of being respected and a key member of her community. So think about that. If someone took away your job title tomorrow, who would you be? What would define you? And if you can't answer that question confidently, early retirement might be rougher than you think. So you really do need to think that through carefully. When you retire, you don't just lose your income, you lose your main source of social interaction. You see, work gives you daily contact with colleagues, shared experiences, and a sense of belonging. All of that will pretty much vanish when you take retirement. Loneliness is now recognised as a bigger killer than obesity. Studies show lonely people have a 50% higher chance of dying early. Social isolation doesn't just make you sad, it increases the risk of depression, anxiety, heart disease, and cognitive decline. It's not very nice. And your workplace might have annoying people in there, people you might not like, but it does keep you connected. After retirement, maintaining friendship takes real effort. You have to actively schedule meetups, join clubs, volunteer, find new communities, even find new friends. And it doesn't happen naturally like it would have done at work. And here's another problem. Your brain needs social stimulation, conversations, debates, problem solving with others. So these help keep your mind sharp. But when you retire and spend days alone, your thinking skills deteriorate faster. Research shows people who stay socially engaged have better mental health and live longer. The risk here is thinking you'll easily make new friends after retiring. The reality is most people don't. They become isolated and regret it later, especially if you end up having a really long retirement. And I want to talk about something called the golden decade. So that's roughly your early 60s when you're still fit, healthy, energetic enough to really enjoy life. Usually this is when you can travel, take up new hobbies, be active with the grandkids, and do the things you've been putting off. If you find yourself working to 67 or 68, well, you might miss this window. Your knees might not let you hike anymore, your energy drops, you just don't feel physically fit as you used to. And all of a sudden, health issues start to appear. Suddenly the freedom that you waited for doesn't feel as free. You see, average life expectancy in the UK is 84 for men and 86 for women. But healthy life expectancy is much lower. See, many people spend their final years dealing with illness, reduced mobility, and caring needs. So waiting to retire means you might get less quality time in retirement. But retiring too early brings a different risk. You might run out of money in your 70s and 80s when you actually need it the most. Healthcare costs continue to rise, and care home fees are eye-watering. They can be up to £100,000 per year. You could also face 20 to maybe even 40 years of retirement to fund. That timing question has no perfect answer. It's all about weighing up whether you want more healthy years of freedom now or more financial security later. And that, of course, is a very difficult question to answer. But again, it's one of the key questions you need to think through. What if you didn't have to choose between working full-time or stopping work completely? See, phased retirement lets you gradually reduce your hours while accessing part of your pension to replace lost income. And increasingly, I'm seeing more and more people do this. And I think this is going to become more of the norm now rather than people taking cliff edge retirement. So in the UK, you can usually start phased retirement from age 55. But that's going to rise to 57 from 2028. You might drop from 5 days to 3 days a week, or just go part-time through the week. Or you might find yourself taking a less demanding role. Your employer doesn't have to agree, but many do, because many employers nowadays would prefer to keep the skills rather than lose them. And obviously it's going to help you with your transition as well into retirement. Studies show 62% of UK retired employees believe phased retirement improves work-life balance. You keep some structure, some social connections, some sense of purpose, but you also get more free time. You're not suddenly thrown into the deep end of retirement. Financially, well, obviously that's going to help too. You keep earning, so you're still building national insurance credits, and you're withdrawing less from your pension pot. That money has more time to grow. Phased retirement works especially well if you're not quite financially ready, but physically able to keep going. It's the compromise that many people wish they'd considered earlier. And as I said, when I've been speaking to people, this is the direction of travel that a lot of people are heading towards. Before you make any decisions about early retirement, ask yourself these questions honestly. Firstly, does your work actively harm your physical or mental health? If yes, then leaving might genuinely improve your well-being. Secondly, what will you do with your time? Have you got hobbies, interests, or plans? Or are you just going to end up watching daytime TV within a month of retirement? Third, who are your friends outside of work? If most of your social life comes from colleagues, retirement could leave you isolated and lonely. Fourth, what gives you purpose and identity beyond your job? If you can't answer this, you need to figure it out before you stop working. Fifth, are you financially secure enough to last 20 or 30 years, maybe even 40 years without earning? The key thing is to be brutally honest about the numbers. Don't rely on vague hopes. You really do need to budget this properly. And finally, and I think this is the key, is phased retirement an option for you? Could you reduce hours instead of stopping completely? So these questions aren't meant to scare you. They're meant to make sure you're making the right decisions for the right reasons. So do spend some time thinking about them, or even discuss them with a partner or a family friend, but someone that can help you think this thing through. So to wrap up the video, what are the key takeaways? Well, early retirement isn't just about money. It's about health, identity, purpose, and social connection. And the research to me is pretty clear. Stopping work abruptly can be brilliant if your job was damaging you, but it can also accelerate cognitive decline, trigger depression, and leave you isolated if you're not prepared. And that golden decade really, really matters. Your early 60s are when you're most likely to be healthy enough to enjoy retirement. Miss that window and you might regret it. But retire too early and you risk running out of money later. Phased retirement offers that middle path. It lets you keep some income, some structure, and some social connections while gradually adjusting to life after work. And the most important thing, well, really simple, I think, you've got to be honest with yourself. Don't retire early just because you're fed up with your job. Retire early because you have a clear path for what comes next, because you know who you'll be without work. And because you've thought through the non-financial consequences just as carefully as the financial ones, early retirement, when it's done right, can really be fantastic. Done wrong, however, it can be one of the biggest regrets of your life. So if you did find this video helpful, please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more retirement related advice. Goodbye and good luck.